Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us our returning guest, comic Dave Smith, who is host of Part of the Problem here at Gas Digital Network. 1/3 of the Legion of Skanks, his comedy special Libertas hit #1 on Amazon for an extended period. So I'm really glad to be continuing this crossover series of episodes. What I want to talk to you about, Dave, is you just got back from South Dakota, where Freedom Fest was. And I'm very curious to hear about it. I got invited to speak last year. Obviously, it fell apart because of COVID. I got stiffed out of airplane, my flight tickets didn't get reimbursed. So I'm still asking that about it a year later. And for this, they should never be forgiven. I'm curious as to how big just give me the general feel of it. And actually, what's it like compared to PorcFest?
Oh, okay. Well, you weren't able to like transfer your airline credits or get like at least credit with the airline or something?
No, because they gave me a voucher. So I was like, oh, I might as well for the first time in my life fly first class. And then it was a whole fucking thing. It was a situation.
Yeah. Well, I had a nightmare with the airline coming home. My flight got canceled and then it was a whole nightmare, but it took me all day at the airport.
What happened? I want to hear this story. It'll be funny.
So I got a flight coming home. It was something like, I think I was leaving at like 11 in the morning, getting home.
Sunday.
Yeah, and getting home at like 3 p.m. or something like that. So it was like a perfect little flight. Get the afternoon with my girls. Been missing them because I've been gone 5 days.
Oh, was that long? Okay.
Yeah, it was long. I was hosting the whole thing. So I was there for the whole event. And then I'm like just a completely, like soft family man at this point. Like even when I'm there, it's like, oh, we're going to Freedom Fest and I'm going to party, but I'm just there like looking at pictures of my daughter on my phone being like, oh, I miss her. And so by the end I was so ready to come home. And the last night I got a text from United Airlines and they're like, oh, your flight's been canceled tomorrow due to weather conditions. And so you can try to change your flights and there's only one flight leaving out of South Dakota that day on United. So I had to go to it. It's like 6 a.m. flight and there's a layover, which is annoying because I had a direct flight, first class. It was big, okay, comfortable flight. None of that available anymore. Now it's a layover and it's row 27F or whatever. But whatever. I'm like, I got to get home today. So I go there, get on the flight. Got to have breakfast with Reed Coverdale at the airport, who I very much like. That's my boy. He's like a younger, like libertarian podcaster guy. Okay. Great guy, by the way. Love him. So whatever. I get on the flight, go to Denver for the layover. Then my flight from there gets delayed again. Then
how big are these delays? Like 15 minutes, like an hour?
No, they were like half hour, 45 minutes, another half hour. So just kind of waiting. So
you're going west. Denver's west of the Dakotas.
Yes, it's not on the way. It's just the next airport where you can get a flight home from. So then they're like, listen, this flight's oversold. So they're offering money to people to change their flight. And I'm just like, I'm not taking money. I'm going home to my daughter. It's like they really would have had to offer me like $10,000 to get me to consider. How can you
call yourself a pro-capitalist when people offer you money and you're not taking it? What, like you wouldn't call the cops if someone was murdering your family?
That person does exist, believe it or not. So they basically come to this thing. I guess they couldn't buy enough people off. They were offering like $1,000.
Oh, that's no joke.
No joke, but not nearly enough to get me to consider not coming home at that point. But then they go,
I'm surprised it's that much.
So because the flight's overbooked or whatever, I don't understand how airplanes work at all. I don't know how they get you in the clouds.
The air pressure is higher on the.
Perhaps you might be right. You might not be right. I have no way of knowing.
The market works. The market works.
So they go, now we have to stop and refuel in Atlanta. So now they go, instead of having a layover, I'm now going to have, for the first time in my life, and I've traveled quite a bit, For the first time in my life, they're telling me I'm going to have a double layover. I have to go to Atlanta. So now, speaking of things that have never happened to me on a plane before, okay? So we get on the plane. We go, this is like, fuck, we got to go to Atlanta now and then finally get home. But whatever, I'm on the plane. Go down the runway, pick up maximum speed. We're about to take off. Pilot slams on the brakes. Slams on the brakes. Yeah. It was so quick that it was kind of, you're just like, oh shit. And then before you know it, we're stopped.
Wait, I'm sorry. If you're going full speed in the pilot, are you not like hitting your head into the chair in front of you? That's scary.
It was pretty rattly. Okay. But and then you're almost like, oh shit, is the plane going to tip over? Is something going to happen? Yeah. But then it comes to a stop and we're stopped. And you're like, oh, all right, we're here. We're still on the ground. Everything's fine. And while it's happening, the pilot came on the loudspeaker and there was none of that like calm pilot voice. It was like he was a little bit shaken and he was like stay in your seats with your seatbelts on, like very like kind of frantically. Oh. And then you're like, okay. And
Thank God it wasn't a woman.
Oh yeah, no, they don't allow that type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the airlines aren't in the best shape ever.
It's a plane, not a kitchen.
I mean, we're still living in a society here. They're going to throw some chick up there and hope. Anyway, but then it's like it stops, and then the plane's just driving slowly. So you're like, okay, I mean, everything's fine. And then it was really funny because he came on kind of frantic, like stay in your seats with your seatbelts fastened. And then it's just like 30 seconds of nothing, and then he comes right back on in pilot voice, and he's like, all right, guys, one of those engines decided they didn't want to work on us as we were going up the runway. So I think he actually made a great move.
Of course he did, yes.
And realized one of the engines wasn't working. And he's like, I'm bailing on this takeoff. Now, I don't know what would have happened had we taken off and an engine fails. Like, I know nothing about planes. It could be, in my mind, anything from like, one of the engines isn't working, but the other ones will get us there. Don't worry about it. Or we need to make an emergency landing, or we're all going to die. It's anywhere in that range. I
think we all know enough from movies, which are basically an accurate reflection of everything, that if something goes wrong with the plane, it explodes in midair.
Yes, but it really...
it's just going to block like a fireball.
I mean, I think it could have been anything from we're fine, we'll make it there, to that. I don't know, or anything in between. But, and at this point, people aren't even like pissed off anymore. People just want to get off this plane.
Wait, I'm confused. How do you think Lewis got to the engine?
So I haven't talked to him yet. I don't know, but I'm hoping to figure it out. This week on Skanks, we'll figure out what the story was.
Why did Lewis?
It always starts with like, so I was in a great mood and I went to Starbucks. Then they were late on my coffee. Next thing you know, I'm going to the airport in Denver. Anyway, so then that plane, then they had to get a whole new plane. This delayed it another like 4 hours before we took off, but they didn't end up going to Atlanta. They took us straight home. But anyway, the day that was supposed to be an easy flight home became crazy. I didn't get until real late or early this morning.
Wait. So you're what, like 6'2"?
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy for me because I could fit in the overhead compartment. Is it annoying for you, like being tall, to be like trapped in these plane seats?
Yeah, it sucks. Your legs are like, all like fucking crammed and stuff. Luckily though, I did get there was like a couple next to me and they moved. They found like an empty row. So I had an empty row too.
But
so
how was it empty if they were overbooked?
The next plane that they came and got us was a bigger plane. So that plane had engine problems. And so they just bailed on that plane and got us a new plane. And that one was a bigger plane.
And everyone who got that $1,000 took it. Basically, they just the air blinds paid them for nothing.
I don't know. I don't know what happened to those people. I don't know what.
Actually, we paid them because it's our tax money.
Yeah, right.
Bailing out these assholes.
Yeah, probably.
So okay. Wow.
But aside from that, which was an adventure and not very fun, but Freedom Fest itself was a lot of fun. It was a great time. Great group of people there. It's a huge group. I mean, it's thousands of people go to these things. I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, no. I was just wondering if I should say it, and I'll say it without mentioning the names. I want to hear about all the people you ran into, but what I was laughing to myself is someone who shall remain nameless because they didn't ask for their permission before we were recording, took a photo with Nick Sarwark and then tagged it at Nick Sarwark at CIA on Twitter. And Nick Sarwark, who for people who don't know, he's the former head of the Libertarian Party. And now it seems his role on Twitter is to snipe at libertarians to get them ass mad. And my operating hypothesis is that he's being a heel, which is the wrestling equivalent of the bad guy, where your job is to get the audience all riled up and get them all hot and bothered, and that's his shtick. So I thought like he was pretty good at it. He gets a lot of like feedback, like and hate and whatever. But then he sent a couple of goons over to this person, and we're like, "Oh, you should say to his face, blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "Oh, so this stuff really gets him ass mad." So he's
mad about that.
So people should definitely not do that. They should definitely never take a picture with him. And if they do, they definitely shouldn't tag at CIA, because that is attracting the attention of people whose job it is to keep us safe. You know, you're distracting them from catching all the wreckers and all the saboteurs and all those others who are undermining our nation recovering from this plague that Donald Trump visited on us under Putin's directions in his lab in China.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's completely accurate to say that all the CIA does is keep us safe and hunt terrorists, because as you know, they also have an anti-racism mission.
That's true.
They're also committed to equality, to helping people who have anxiety disorders.
Dave, I think we can agree that inequality is itself a form of terrorism. If someone has a bigger house than me, I might as well fly a plane into it. That's just logic.
Yeah. No,
do the math.
That's
Hello,
true.
Have you not read The Fountainhead? That was the whole climax of it. The guy had a bigger building, so he's like, "Well, I'm going to put a stop to this," and he did. And he was acquitted.
Now, I know some of you guys are going to say, I read The Fountainhead, but you haven't read the secret final chapter where this all comes out. It's all in there, all part of it. Yeah, I did. Yeah, he gets mad about a lot of this stuff. He plays like he's not, but he gets really annoyed by it. But I did see him there. I saw him at one of my comedy shows, and I saw him there. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Oh, he was in the audience?
Yeah. Like, why are you coming to watch me? Like, I would never come watch you.
What kind of CIA operative would go watch people? That doesn't make any sense.
But by the way, I kind of made it known. I mean, I didn't say it to him. We didn't really like talk to. We ran into each other at one point. We were both walking with groups by each other, but I said, "What's up?" to him. Like, I don't know. It's like, I'm not going to be weird in person. I feel like we had our battle in the past, and I've moved on from it. I don't think he has, but I have.
What was his reaction?
He said hi back. Okay. But the thing is, like, to me, I'm just like, we could just end this. You could just stop, and we could all just be fine with each other. And anyway, it's kind of strange. However, I was going to say to you, to what the question you asked before, the difference, like the major difference from, say, Pork Fest to Freedom Fest is there's two things, really. Number one, it's way bigger. I mean, it's like thousands and thousands of people more than at Pork Fest. Yeah.
People got in a plane to South Dakota for this?
Yes, they sure did.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, it was packed. I mean, the main stage that I was hosting was, if I had to guess, it's probably about a 3,000 seater.
Wow.
And then the other secondary stage was probably 1,000 seater. And then they had like other little breakout sessions going on in different areas of this convention center. It was this is a big event. But the major difference is that it is really more of a libertarian Republican fusion event than strictly speaking a libertarian event. Like Porkfest is all libertarians.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe with a few exceptions, but it's pretty much all libertarians there. Freedom Fest is like definitely a hybrid. Like it's like half Republicans, probably liberty leaning Republicans, but definitely not just our people. But I actually thought that was, I loved that about it, because it's a chance to kind of like talk to an audience. Like it's the best way to talk to a right-wing audience, because you're already at an event that's pushing freedom and half the crowd are your loyal supporters. So, like whatever you say, they're going to see people around completely agreeing with you, and they're supposed to be here celebrating freedom anyway. And so it's just, I really liked that dynamic of it.
Yeah, it's like Ron Paul with that heroin question at the Republican debates. Was that 2012?
Yeah.
Where like if it wasn't him, or if it was Tulsi who said that, they'd probably boo her or at least sit on their hands and they'd be confused. But once enough people get animated, then they're going to get animated also. Because I think a lot of people who are Republicans have been taught this. Have been taught this political binary. And since I tend to support freedom and the Republicans talk about freedom, I have to be Republicans. Then when people come at you, like, no, we don't just talk about it. We really do want to like put DEA agents in jail kind of situation. Like then
Right,
they're like,
'cause
oh, okay.
they're used to being like, we're the freedom people and we're being attacked by the socialist
Yeah.
people. But now I'm attacking you from the freedom. Like
Yeah.
I'm over here like from the like, well, are you really the freedom people or not? And particularly right now, it's just an interesting time because a lot of these Republicans almost like they don't know what their agenda is or what their identity is. It's now in the post-Trump kind of world, it's like they know they're against everything that we're against too. You know, like they know that they're against the corporate press and against Biden and against, you know, like the deep state and against this stuff. But they don't really have a strong foundational reason as for why. And so it's an interesting time to try to talk to those people. Now, the moment I was most proud of the whole thing, I did this panel. It was like a comedy panel.
Oh, God, kill me now.
Well, it was.
Good Lord, I'd rather
sounded
be in Anne
awful.
Frank's attic. Who's in it?
I was up, me and Dave Rubin and Lou Perez, you know him?
Lou's hilarious.
Yeah,
I
he's
love
great.
him.
So
Adore him.
It was fun. It was a good group. And Julie Borowski was on the panel
amazing.
as well. So it was a good
she's
group.
funny.
Yeah,
she's a sweetheart.
She's very funny and super sweet. But we were just having fun and we were joking around with the crowd, but also talking about like some serious stuff. And I was like, kind of like the crowd liked me. I'd been hosting the whole week and making people laugh. And I did this kind of in a way, like, you know, using comedy with it. But I said at one point to the crowd where I was like, look, I know there's a lot of like Republicans and right wingers in this crowd. And I know that you're not going to love what I'm about to say. But just take a deep breath and understand.
America is awesome.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, he tricked us. He tricked us.
Well, I said to him, I just go, listen, just take a deep breath and know before I say this that I'm right and you're wrong. And it got a big laugh from the crowd that I said this. And I go, look, this is going to be hard to hear. This is all your fault. It's like everything. It's all your fault. Take another moment, like take that in. And I go, but you guys, if you supported George W. Bush and Dick Cheney as they built up the war on terror, and you were like, hey, you know what? I'm fine with the war on terrorism. Hey, you know, it's as long as it's pointed at Muslim people, and sure, we got to kill a few million of them or torture a few of them or violate their rights or whatever. I go, if you accepted that, then the tragic irony is that the war on terrorism that you supported has now decided that its target is, wait for it, you. You are now the target of the war on terror. And I like had a whole rant about how basically just like right wingers were responsible for so much of what this is, but they were laughing with me. And I think a lot of them were like, at least able to be like, hey, he's got a point. Like there's something in what he's saying now. And thanks to Donald Trump in a lot of different ways, it's a lot easier for them to swallow this message now, particularly because Jeb Bush was the great enemy of Donald Trump. And to be like, oh, fuck the Bushes is not such a tough pill to swallow for right wingers these days.
Hey guys, want to take a second, talk to you about Fume, a sponsor that I really enjoy being able to discuss. If you go to breathefume.com, BREATHE fume.com, FUM/Malice, and use code Malice10, you get 10% off. What Fume does, it's a natural and portable tool for allergy relief, relaxation, and a great nicotine replacement. It's a wooden inhaler made in Canada, no electronics, and they have these cores, which are like these foam kind of things, filled with the benefits of super plants. You don't have any chemicals added. So they've got a ton of them. They've got bubbly lime, which is for mood boosting and energy, lime, lemon, spearmint, shield, which is peppermint, eucalyptus, and clove that helps your immunity system and energy. But it's a really great, it looks cool. So everyone's busting out their vape like Dave Smith. Do you want to look like Dave Smith? He's not even verified. No, you want to be that guy at the party. Oh, what is that? This is a good way, if you're vaping or smoking, to figure out what to do with your hands and do it in a way that is not going to be addictive or averse to your health. If you go to breathefume.com and use code Malice10, you get 10% off your order today. Check them out. Let's get back to the show. I had a parallel experience a couple of hours ago. I was on Michael Knowles' podcast. It's going to drop next Friday. So like August 6th or whatever that Friday would be.
How did it go?
I'm not going to tell you. I'm about to tell you.
No, but I mean, you're telling me a specific thing, but I just was like a general, like,
no, I'm going to really get into it because this is exactly a parallel experience to what you had. So Michael and I follow each other on Twitter. I think those Daily Wire guys, even though they're in many ways boomer cons, do get a bad rap. Matt Walsh, for example, I don't agree with him about social conservatism, but he does engage in debate, and he has unorthodox views a lot of the time. So, and he's not like basic. What I used to hate about conservatives, and I still do, but it's not universal about conservatives, is this idea that if we vote Republican, America is going to be saved. Like all we need is a Republican president and Republican Congress, and then it's game over. And then there's enough data where they're like, okay, the ones who are intellectually honest are like, okay, well, we tried it, and that's completely a fallacy.
Yep.
So Knowles, I was really shocked because not only was he familiar with anarchist thought, but he was brazenly saying the conservative movement hasn't conserved anything like in the 20th century. Like what do we have to show for it? So there is that moment of reckoning with conservatives. I remember I was in Stu Berger's show. Stu is Glenn Beck's co-host. He has his own show, Stu Does America. And, I was pushing him, and maybe 6 years ago, there would be a different answer. But he's like, yeah. He's like, if I want fiscal conservatism, it's not an option in Washington. Like, I was like, I'm not even gonna pretend otherwise. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, it's ridiculous. So it's I had the same experience that a lot of these ideological erstwhile Republicans are really being like, okay, like this was our game plan. We got it through. Something's not adding up. And, and they are looking for those answers to, and the joke I made to him, I'm like, you guys are like a diabetic going to the store, choosing between Coke and Pepsi and wondering why your feet keep getting cut off.
Yeah.
I mean, these are not palatable options. And I broke it down for him. And what was amazing to me is, you have some of these conservatives who are very visceral. Like the worst of this is the Candace Owens fans. Because if you disagree with Candace Owens about anything, not only do they say, oh, you can't handle a strong Black woman, I guess you're racist. Like literally, no matter what you say in response, they just repeat that over and over. They might as well have the clapping emoji. And I'm like, I can see why a progressive would look at you and think you're basically animals that need to be like put in pens, because there's not even a pretense. This is like a toy that you wind up the string and it just repeats the same phrase. It's shockingly amazing. But there's other conservatives who are more intellectual, and I'm not even blaming her for her audience. I'm just saying that's a function of whatever the reasons might be. They're like, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board. Yeah. Because like Mitch McConnell coming out, like, look, it's easy. You either get vaccinated or we have more lockdowns. For a lot of them to be like, okay, the mask is dropping. It's not even like they're like, how dare you betray us? They're like, oh, like the jig is up. We realize we've been conned. Right. And we've been told we've been conned. And now you're telling us to our face, I'm a con job. So let me finish. No,
that's so interesting. Yeah.
The episode was supposed to be half hour. We went an hour long. The one gotcha he had for me, which it wasn't a gotcha, like it was a question I couldn't really feel comfortable answering me. He goes, well, if you're a Christian and according to this Bible verse, you should follow your rulers, like would you tell that person that they shouldn't be an anarchist? And I'm like, okay, I can't. Like if you think if God exists, therefore you can't be an anarchist, and like checkmate, like, okay, maybe that's checkmate. I don't know enough. And I did point him to the Tolstoy essay in the book, but like that was an interesting tack for him to take. Go ahead. Sorry,
there certainly are, just on that point, there are some Christian anarchists who make like biblical arguments for anarchism. As someone who's didn't grow up a Christian, and it's just not exactly like, I'm not familiar enough to know whether that's the correct or incorrect biblical argument. But it's like to your point, for people.
But can I just say one thing? What I did say to him, spoiler alert, I said, listen, if you want to tell me Bill Clinton is heaven sent and that Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and AOC are a choir of angels, I have no argument against you. So like that was the best I could do.
Yeah, no, that's actually not bad though. But if you were like a somewhat thinking, somewhat principled conservative, and you look at it, almost you would think it's hard to not see what's staring you in the face. So if you'd say in like 1996 or 1998, when Republicans had huge victories in the House. I can't remember whether it was it
94. You mean 94?
Oh, it was 94.
When they took, yeah.
That's right. My mistake. In 94, they took the House back for the first time in like 30 years or something
40
like
years,
that. 40, yeah. And you had a serious movement of conservatives there who, and this is around the time I think you were at Cato, right? And there's this big movement of Republicans who were saying a lot of things that to this day, me and you would really like. I mean, there were people there who were, this is the post-Cold War. Now the Soviet Union has fallen.
Yeah.
There isn't as much of a kind of like the driving force here is being, communist Cold Warriors. We have to go fight all over the world. There was much more of an interventionist streak that started taking over in the Republican Party. Budget hawks was a huge thing. They were all talking about cutting the size and scope of government.
There was a great one. They were talking about sunsetting the tax code, which means the tax code is going to start from scratch in a few years. So all those like log rolling and tax whatever bullcrap for big corporations, if that, which they put in the 70s, someone put in the 70s just stays there because people just keep voting aye.
Right.
That's all going to be flushed down the toilet.
Yeah, and there was a lot of like enthusiasm behind some of these movements and or behind some of these legislative pushes. And to the point that even in the year 2000, right, which is following 8 years of Bill Clinton, if you listen to what George W. Bush campaigned on, what he campaigned on was a humble foreign policy. No nation building, no policing of the world. America is here to defend America. We need free markets here. We need deregulation. We need to cut spending and cut taxes. All of this stuff, right? And now you look at it and we're 20 years in to the 21st century.
Right.
And Republican presidents had 12 of those 20 years. And so if you can't look at it and just say objectively, by any of those standards of what those conservatives, the agenda that they wanted to put into action. None of it. And not only none of it, it's not like we didn't get that through. It went 8,000 miles in the opposite direction. And so it is interesting, and particularly coming off this Donald Trump thing where he was this huge middle finger to the establishment, and it's okay, now that failed too. So now what?
Do you know what they should do? Like if I were advising these people, but they would never do this. If I were them, I would put forth Obama's 2016 budget with population growth, expanded, and say, okay, vote against Obama's budget. Like I did, and like have them argue that. Like that would be a good kind of stunt to put them on their heels.
It's so funny because
that'd be so radical to go back to 2016.
What's so funny is that it's almost like you're almost arguing that your quote doesn't even go far enough, because now you're almost challenging the conservatives to drive the speed limit, and they're like, whoa. I don't even think we could do that. Yeah, go back to 2016. What was that, like 100 years ago? 2016, it's so even asking the Republicans to just stand for what they opposed the Democrats doing 4 years ago is asking far too much.
Don't even stand for it. Just propose it. You know how like no Democrat senators voted for the Green New Deal? They just voted aye. Yeah. Or like president, excuse me. So just put it forward and watch this isn't a serious proposal. Was it serious in 2016? Oh, it's COVID. It's happened since then. Okay, this will be our negotiating starting point. Yeah. Like let's get rid of so it's really shameful, embarrassing. Who was the person that you were most excited to see at the event? And also a separate question, who got the biggest kind of, beside yourself, like reaction from the crowd?
Well, I'll tell you that there were a few. Larry Elder spoke, and I think he might have killed the hardest.
Yeah, he's
very
in front
eloquent. Of the crowd. He is a very good speaker. He was really impressive. Certainly some conservative opinions that I wouldn't agree with, and I'm sure you wouldn't either. But man, was he an impressive guy to listen to give, like a 45-minute speech. And he's running for governor in California right now. So he was on in beast mode. It wasn't just like, oh, here's some conference I'm stopping by. Like he was really doing it. James O'Keefe from Project Veritas got a humongous pop from the crowd. Like they really loved him. But probably the biggest was Governor Noem, the governor of South Carolina. And I got to tell you.
You mean South Dakota?
Huh?
South Dakota. You said South Carolina.
Did I say South Carolina? I meant South Dakota.
Yeah.
Yes, South Dakota.
Kristi Noem. Yeah, she's a dime.
And she goes up there, and I got to say, even your most hardcore libertarian, people like myself, the first thing she said, her opening line was just something like, she goes, "Welcome to South Carolina."
South Dakota.
Jesus Christ! I keep saying I'm retarded.
This is going to be a great presidential campaign. I am so honored to be here in East Virginia.
Okay, I got a few years to work on this stuff, so let's South Dakota. Yeah. So she goes, welcome to South Dakota. The
Okay,
only state, she got it right. I didn't, but she did. She goes, the only state in the union that was not locked down for one day, the only state in the union that did not have one mask mandate, and the only state in the union where their governor did not deem certain workers to be unessential. And she goes, and the reason I didn't do it is because I simply do not have the right to do any of that. And the pop was like thunderous. And I mean, even as your most hardcore anarchist, like I was in the back and you just like feel your hand almost going like, oh shoot, what am I doing? What was that? And it was just such a powerful, like, how do you even argue after that? You go, yeah, you're the best governor. Like, I'm not saying she's perfect, and she voted against evidently like a referendum to legalize weed, which really sucks that, you know, and from the libertarian perspective, my perspective kind of takes away from your whole, I'm all for freedom angle, you know, okay, well, you were still enslaving people for pot, but man, that was powerful. And they really, really loved her.
Hey there, auto mechanics and super cool do-it-yourself guys who work on their own cars, like me. I want to tell you about rockauto.com. It's an online store with every auto part at the best prices. It's your one-stop shop for everything auto parts. Rockauto.com has been in business for 20 years, and they make it easy to find the parts you need at the best possible prices. No more talking to counter guys who need to order your parts. They aren't really sure what you're looking for. They don't have quite what you need. And then after the hassle, they still charge you huge storefront markups. At rockauto.com, you can easily find everything you need. And whether you're a mechanic, an auto shop, or working in your own car, like me, everyone has access to the same incredible pricing at rockauto.com. So if you're a car guy, right now, go to rockauto.com and check out all the parts available for your car. You're going to have so much fun looking at car parts. Once more, go to rockauto.com. No promo code needed, as their pricing is already that good. When you order, make sure to tell rockauto.com that you heard about them on Your Welcome. Let's get back to the show. Okay, wow. That's impressive.
I'll tell you the person I was most impressed with, who I completely did not expect, was Senator Cynthia Lummis, excuse me, who I had never heard of.
Yeah. What state is she from?
She's from Wyoming. She's a first term U.S. senator. So she's in her first year, just got elected in these last elections. I had no idea who she was. I saw on my schedule there's a senator who I'm introducing today, and you know that's enough to kind of get your attention. Like, oh, look, a senator. And I figured she'd be some Republican freedom senator. Yeah. She'd say, hey, we should lower taxes, and capitalism is better than socialism, or something like that.
Yeah, the liberals. Yeah.
So I go up there, and she's got her guy, like her chief of staff or advisor, or whoever the guy with her is this guy Tyler Lindholm. And he is, so I go backstage and someone was like, oh, here, let me introduce you to the senator. And we start walking over toward him, and this Tyler guy, this huge, big military looking guy with like a cowboy hat and boots on and everything. And he literally looks at me, makes eye contact, and he goes, no way, Dave Smith. Oh, dude, it's so nice to meet you. I'm a huge fan. And he goes, I'm a huge fan of yours. He goes, dude, did you see Scott Horton last night? He was so great, and blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, it's such a bummer Tom Woods couldn't be here. And so right away, I'm like, whoa, what? Like,
he's naming all the unverified people and not the blue checks that matter. That's really,
that's exactly right. Yes.
But that's why she's the junior senator. That's not why. That's not why.
So right away, I'm kind of like, well, this is not what I expected at all. Like, okay. And I was like, oh, thank you. Very nice to meet you. Talk to the senator for a few minutes. I introduce her on stage. She goes on and gives a 30-minute speech about monetary policy.
No.
I'm talking. Are you
serious?
Michael, she was excellent. She starts talking about fiat currency, fractional reserve banking, the destruction it holds over the economy, and how much power it gives the political class. Starts talking about how the answer is Bitcoin and 100% reserve requirements on banking. I mean, like, I'm sitting there just like with my jaw on the floor in the back. Like, this was not at all what I expected. So afterward, I talked to this Tyler guy for a little bit. He's hardcore. He's with the Defend the Guard movement. I don't know if you know about those guys, but it's this group of anti-war combat vets who are pushing state legislation to deny the federal regard access to the reserves, so that they
God,
can't.
This is porn.
It's unbelievable. Now they're going around. They fail at a lot of these state house votes, but they're giving speeches. It's the most powerful thing ever, because it's not like hippies who are against the war. It's badass combat vets who are telling you exactly why you do not, short of a congressional declaration of war, you do not have the right to use the national reserves. You know what I mean, for your foreign affairs. So he's great. He's like this guy. And then I went up to her and I was like, hey, Senator, I got to say, I'm like blown away. Like a senator who's like understands monetary policy. Like I felt like I was watching a unicorn out there. Like I didn't think that existed. And she points over at Tyler and she goes, well, I got a good teacher. And I was like, wow. So this senator has someone really great in her ear. And it's not just like he gave her some talking points and then she went out and said them.
He sat her down.
He sat her down. He got her interested enough that she started reading this stuff on her own and is now really talking about it. So that's like, I'm singing her praises coming out of that thing.
One of the things people in the audience don't appreciate, and this, I had this conversation with Michael Knowles, because he's like, oh, we don't have the numbers. I'm like 9 people made this pro-choice country, regardless of what your opinion is about abortion. It was all you needed was those 9 people, and there's nothing you can really do about it, right? So what people don't understand is that any political system is always going to be the organized minority against the disorganized majority. This is the basis of rent seeking, which is, I hate that expression because it doesn't have to do with rent. But the idea is, okay, I'm an anchovy farmer, right? I want to have subsidies for anchovy farms. You and Lewis and everybody else do not have an opinion, so you're not going to fight. It'll be very easy for me to get that senator on the phone, be his lobbyist, and be like, all right, we need anchovy subsidies. Give me $1 million a year. He has to type in one sentence. No one's going to know.
Yeah.
I get my money, and you guys, all of you have to pay a penny each, but there's this asymmetry. So it's the same kind of thing. If you have enough people and everyone else just floating around, not knowing what's going on, or just, following their nose, or looking for their keys where the light happens to be, that is how a lot of change gets affected. And this is a big complaint about Washington, that they have these huge bills that no one reads. It's literally impossible to read them. And so it could be worked in a nefarious way, but it could also work in a positive way. When you pass a bill like, oh, let's just make it so you are allowed to use Bitcoin at the store, by law. Oh, okay, well, I don't know what the hell that is, but what do I care? And then all of a sudden you have all this kind of cataclysmic change. Yeah,
I completely agree with you. And it's not, and it's not like it's a false choice to say it's not a matter of like that we don't need more people, but the idea that we need 51% is completely ridiculous. By the way, 51% isn't even what it takes to win an election, because like half the country doesn't even vote in the elections. You're already down to like 25% to win an election. But if you had 10 million really competent, passionate, intelligent people who believed in freedom, in positions of influence, who are like, or just influential people in their communities and stuff, this would be a drastically different country. Like drastically different.
And so that kind of model, like people need to appreciate more, just how few people it takes in the right places to affect change. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt got elected by one person.
Yeah, is that right?
So, well, Leon Salgas, he shot McKinley.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah.
And then now he's the president. So there's just lots of examples that are not as nefarious as that, where it's just like I think the draft got ended because someone read Ayn Rand's writings about it, and they happened to be Nixon's ear, or whoever it was. So like there's lots of little examples like this where it just takes them one.
Well, I think and the other thing, wasn't Alan Greenspan the one who was like, I think he was influential in that, and he was a Randian, and he was part of Rand's circle. He was at Gerald Ford's chief economic advisor and later the head of the Federal Reserve. But I don't think he was the one who pushed that. I thought him
the draft policy.
I thought him and Milton Friedman, I could be misremembering this, but I thought him and Milton Friedman were really instrumental in getting that through.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. I just know that like it happened to be that one person read that one right essay. And especially when you're dealing with something like this, where she didn't have an opinion, I'm sure, on the Fed one way or another. And all of a sudden, not only is he giving her factual information and a perspective, there's also the motivating factor, because you realize, wait a minute, this is an issue that I can make mine. It's sitting on the table and no one else really cares about it. This is something I could be, and also there's that motivation because you feel betrayed. because you're like, wait a minute, why haven't I been told this? Even if I'm told this in the case of like, this is wrong, we need the Fed, why are we even discussing this at all? So that really gets people motivated and excited.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay. So who were some of the other speakers that were there?
Other speakers, Senator Mike Lee was there. He did a great job. And then just, I mean, tons of people from the libertarian world. There was a very cool moment where I'm blanking on her name, or I was blanking on her name earlier today. You know, she's a Muslim woman. She was born in Somalia.
Ilyan Hassan. Yes. Yeah, whatever. Yes. Yeah. Ayan.
Okay. So she's like the kind great. Of favorite, and she really was great. And she's super nice. I mean, I met her backstage for a little bit. Couldn't have been more like charming and kind. But she was on a panel with Scott Horton, and she was basically arguing that America needs to win the war against Islam, and that there's a war of these civilizations, and that America must prevail in this war. And Scott they were both super respectful and polite, but Scott just tore her arguments to pieces as someone who really just knew so much more about these conflicts and the history of all of them and how they all arose, and how basically America has played such a contributing role in almost all of the worst Islamist movements that have gained ground. And it was just that was a really, really great panel. I loved that. Spike Cohen gave a great speech, really, really great speech that really got the crowd going. I know there's more. I'm just like,
did you get was there any antagonism? Did people get in your face?
No, none of that at all. Like, I saw a few people there who I think maybe weren't exactly, friendly toward me. But none of them, not one moment of anyone being shitty or anything like that. It all happens on Twitter. It's a weird thing. Like, a lot of those guys, like, when you see them face to face, they're not really trying to have this confrontation. But no, I didn't see any of that. I saw, there was like, I could see when Jo Jorgensen was back there with her people, I could feel a vibe for sure that they were not big fans of mine. But I went up to Jo and was like, "Hey, Jo, good to see you," and everything. And she was like, "Hey, good to see you." Like, it was fine. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I know I was like very critical of her and probably, took some unnecessary shots, and then took a lot of very, very necessary shots. But I don't know. It's kind of like, yeah, you want to put your name out there and run for president. Other people are going to give their take on how you're doing at it.
Absolutely, especially if you kind of don't have a resume, so they can only react to basically what they're seeing in the moment. Sheath underwear is the official underwear for hunks. Do you want to be as hunky as me? Well, the first step is wearing sheath underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice20, you get 20% off your order, and you'll be one step closer to being a stud. They also have a women's line, but ladies, it'll make you sexier. That is a 100% guarantee. What makes Sheath unique is that they have stretchy fabric made of moisture-wicking technology, but what's special is that they have dual pouches for dudes to keep your man parts separated. You're gonna think this is weird, then you try them on and you're like, oh, this is really, really comfortable and a little subversive. Me and Dave and our people, we do love being subversive. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice20, you get 20% off your order, and you could start getting your obliques, your cum gutters, and your abs into place. Check it out. Let's get back to the show. Yeah. I wonder how much of that criticism went back to her, because obviously she wasn't running her own Twitter, and she's a little bit on the older side. She's not elderly.
Yeah, I doubt that she knows of the specifics. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea, but that would be my guess. But I bet that all of her people around her know exactly what was said.
Oh yeah,
There were a few things I said that were certainly disrespectful, but I'm also like, I'm a comedian and an entertainer. So like, I remember at one point about her, I did a video after the election called "What Happened" after Hillary Clinton's thing, and just playing on that, and just a video breaking down what I thought happened with the Libertarian Party, presidential run, and why it was such a disaster. And I think I said at one point that Jo Jorgensen, like I was grading her, and I said, look, Jo Jorgensen is like a really, really great libertarian's wife.
Oh.
You know, and it's like if you met like some really, really great libertarian and you went over to his house.
You
and
mean
met a
like
wife,
Frank O'Connor?
Yeah, you know, and you were like, "Hey, Frank's wife. Oh yeah, she knows a little bit of stuff too." Like that's fine. So that was just in my head. Like when I met her, I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess that part was a little bit harsh." But anyway, but she was cool. She probably completely unaware of all of this. And then I met like some people who I know are like anti-Mises Caucus people. But I was cool with all of them, you know. And
I have
Robbie Suave was there.
Suave.
Huh? Suave. Sorry. Robbie Suave was there, and he was there with who I like. I get along with him real well. And he was there with like a Reason panel, and that Elizabeth Nolan Brown was there, and I know she doesn't like me. She blocked me on Twitter and stuff.
They pretend I don't exist. Is their current policy, which is going to be really tricky for them to maintain once I have more followers than them on Twitter.
Yes. That's well. I mean, I know Matt loves you, right?
No, he doesn't. I don't think particularly. No. I'm not allowed on the fifth column.
Oh, really? I thought you guys were cool. Maybe I'm just going back to like when you and Tom did that show with them.
Last we were cool, but the policy is I'm not allowed on that show. And it's whatever. I just had brunch with Camille, who's one of the co-hosts, who I absolutely adore, and he was the guest on this show last week. So that is the policy there.
I love Camille. I think he's great.
I think it's very, very telling that I think it's telling in several ways that I'm more welcome at the Daily Wire than at Reason. And I think people can interpret it however they will. I don't have any conclusions. I don't have any answers. I do think it's annoying because I was a Reason contributor. They hosted my party for Dear Reader. Mm-hmm. But you know, I also do think that any organization has its own priorities and preferences, and there's certainly things that I'm not privy to. So it could be that there could be some very reasonable, no pun intended, claims for this. But in terms of just this kind of, so what it's really funny if people ask me how white pilled. This is one of the great examples. Back in the 80s, I've told this before, you had at least two rival wrestling organizations. You had the WWF, which is still around as WWE. And then you had NWA, which is where Ric Flair and Sting and all these other people were. And NWA was clearly like the second tier to WWF. They couldn't compete with them like really anywhere. And what would often happen is NWA people would get scouted or drafted by WWF, and they'd bring them in, and they would just act as if this person just spontaneously came out of nowhere. And they would never at all acknowledge that they had this, they were like the champion for years. The moment that changed was one episode where Bobby Heenan, who's my idol, Bobby Ray Heenan, they got Ric Flair, who was the biggest guy at NWA, to WWF, and he held up the NWA belt. And the next week they pixelated it to kind of be tongue in cheek. But the point is, there's this policy, and this worked with the corporate press for decades, where they could pretend entire schools of thought don't exist, right? Yeah. And it was kind of funny with WWF because you just have to change the channel from channel 9 to channel 11 to see this other organization. But it's easy to do it when you have three networks. And between the three of you, you have some kind of broad worldview. And maybe you'll go out one standard deviation. You get Bill Buckley in here, or you have Bill Crystal, or even Reagan, because he's a movie star. But other than that, like, we're just not even going to discuss it. To have that model in an internet setting is, to me, really, I want to say disingenuous, but like really incoherent,
just ineffective. Like it's just not going to work anymore. Yeah, I was making fun of this on my show earlier today. So Joe Biden was at a town hall the other day, and Joe Biden, you know, is just a 90-year-old politician, so he still plays all those games. And the game basically is that we pretend that this is the entire spectrum of thought. Right. And so if I can get someone over here who agrees with me, and I'm over here, then proof everyone agrees. So you'll see this where Democrats will go, even Republicans agree that we need to spend more on infrastructure, as if there's no other way. So he goes up there, and they were talking about, you know, his proposal to spend like another $6 trillion or something. And he goes, look, even Moody's agrees that this would be good for the economy. He goes, now this isn't some liberal think tank. This is a Wall Street firm. And you're like, literally, Joe Biden's argument is like, he goes, look, everyone, all the way from Democrats to Wall Street agree that this is the best move for the economy. But like, he's actually still used to it a time when that does resonate, when you would be like, because really in the 80s on a show like Donahue,
for sure.
This would be the thing. Look, here's everyone from Democrats to Wall Street, the most hardcore capitalist people you could be are this. And as you pointed out, I always loved this tweet that you had. This is from years ago. You said something to the effect of, I wonder how, what percentage of the American people realize that the NRA is the moderate wing of the
I was
guns
on
rights.
Kennedy, and I said the NRA. I said like they're regarded as, if I'm not mistaken, they're regarded as kind of like the sellouts.
Yes.
And the panel and Kennedy laughed at me, and I went on Twitter and I go, "Am I wrong?" And the gun people are like, "No, we hate the NRA. They're the complete sellouts." And Cody Wilson, who was the guy behind 3D printed guns, said the NRA fought us because, and it makes sense strategically because their concern was that the Second Amendment would be adjudicated to not be an individual right, then you're really screwed. But the point is, they were not at all like, rah, 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 this is our workaround. And they've been responsible, or at least haven't fought many of these gun restrictions.
No, the president of the NRA got on stage at CPAC earlier this year and said, if you want to solve gun crime in America, there's only one thing you need to do.
No,
existing gun
he didn't
laws.
say that. He said that.
Swear to God, go check it out. Said enforce. So his big pitch is, you don't need to add more gun control. You just need to enforce the laws that are already on the books. So that is, now I'll tell you, there's a whole bunch of people in the gun rights community whose position is abolish all gun laws, which is not at all the same position as enforce all gun laws.
There was this great meme of like a list of Democratic principles, like open borders and like, trans kids and, not those Democratic policies, but, like typical like laundry list of ostensible leftist positions. And then the right, you had this boomer wearing a MAGA cap saying, I want all that, but legally. It's like, buddy.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Wow.
But so I don't exactly understand, why some of these guys, I think in reason, those types would be playing this game. I mean, I know that like Brian Doherty, who I like a lot. He's a really great writer, and he's really written some great stuff.
Do you know how he signed my book, Radicals for Capitalism, per my request?
How?
To my, I'm not going to say the word, but to my N-word, Michael Malice.
Really?
Yes, GGA. It's in there.
That's okay. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But like there is a thing, like he wrote an article recently about the kind of like civil war in the LP and like the whole kind of like takeover of the Libertarian Party. And there is just a thing, and I'm cool with like the Reason guys. And I think I'm going back on Nick Gillespie's interview thing this week.
You have to ask him why they pretended the Anarchist Handbook didn't exist.
Okay. Absolutely. I absolutely will.
Challenge them. Because
absolutely. Because it's not like, by the way, it was the #1 book. It's not like as if there's like, oh, there was a book that I think is important that you ignored. It's like, it was the book. There's no denying it at this point. Like, but I will say to Brian, like the thing that just kind of like, to me, I'm like, I'm so like accessible to you guys. And we run in so many of the same circles, and all of you guys know who I am. And you're writing a story about the insurgency in the Libertarian Party. Like, dude, shoot me a message.
Wait, they didn't call you?
No, didn't ask for comment. Didn't ask for anything. And I'm just kind of like, look, man, like, obviously.
Wait, you're kidding. You have to be kidding.
No, nothing. Didn't reach out to me at all. Nothing. No comment from me. And I'm like, look, I'm not having like some big head here. Like,
look, I got to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Stop. Because I have to interrupt you because people don't appreciate how this works. How it works with journalism is, let's suppose I'm the New York Times and I want to do a hit piece on Dave Smith, right? I write up my article. I email you at 4:00 and I say, I've got a deadline of 5. What is your answer to this laundry list? Dave Smith could not be reached for comment, right? They all do that to cover their ass, because if you're writing about someone, it is journalism 101 that you make some pretense. It's not often completely insincere of reaching out to the party involved.
But I would not expect Brian to make a false pretense like that. I don't think he's that
Brian's
type of
a decent dude.
Yeah, he's a decent guy, and he's a good and he's a very good and I think honest writer. But I'm just saying, like, it's not like me being like gassed up about my own role, but like if the article is like if the article is about the insurgency, this movement taking over the Libertarian Party, then I'm sorry, there's one guy to go get comment from on that, and it's me. Like, I'm the guy to go talk to about that movement. And so I was just kind of like these things where I'm like, well, why not at least, if you're going to write this piece, like make it a better piece and just get it from, and then find like and then reach out for comment from whoever the chair was at the time. I think this is when Joe Bishop Henchman was still there, and talk to them too. But like, anyway, so there is something to that effect. I know they, I'll give Nick Gillespie credit because they were taking some shots at me at the last Reason Roundtable, and I tweeted a thing out about it. And then I think a lot of my people were giving them shit for it. And Nick did reach out to me and was like, why don't you come on this week? So I appreciate that he's willing to have me come give my response.
I have news about the LP, which will interest very few people, but will interest you. So all the Libertarian Party business is public. There's a Google Groups that is publicly available. Mm-hmm. And if you're someone who happens to spend a lot of time at home with nothing to do, and you know what they say about idle little hands, well, there was drama because, to refresh people's memory, because this is so inside baseball and boring, there was basically the woman, Gilletta Jarvis, who basically declared herself to be, I am the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. She kicked out everybody else unilaterally, passed a series of bylaws unilaterally, including a loyalty oath. And then people were like, you can't this isn't just like breaking Libertarian Party policy. You're breaking the law because you're holding on to assets that don't belong to an individual, but to the party. Yeah. And there was some drama with the head. Is it Joe Bishop Henchman is his name? Joe. Where there was drama because basically he backed her up, but people were like, wait. Then he's saying there was a third party involved. Who is it? And he resigned. Well, I don't know if you know this.
Oh, I don't.
They went into his emails and they got all the emails where he was discussing about this, and they're doing an investigation. I'm not accusing him of anything, but they did this. I think they filmed it to show that they're not just hacking, reading personal stuff. And then they got out of it and they logged out. But what happened, the backstory with that New Hampshire thing is currently an ongoing investigation, and they have the receipts. And I would point out, even though he's blocked me on Twitter correctly, there's no mention of the Libertarian Party in his Twitter biography, which you would think if you were proud to have been a chairman, even if you left under, like I hate what the party has become, you still could have been like, I was chair of the LP when it was something to be proud of. It's quite a resume accomplishment to be head of a party if the party matters that much. So that's where we are with that. And I am very, very interested to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see that.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that corporate media does is it teaches a lot of people that they're the good guy, and the good guy by definition can't do bad things. And they never have to worry about, well, what if the bad guy's stronger than you? Like that happens a lot. Like you're like a big dude just beats the crap out of you, but he's clearly the bad guy, but he still wins. But also, if you're so sure you're the good guy, sometimes you allow yourself to do things that are pretty bad. But since you're so sure you're the hero of the story, because I hate racists, therefore nothing I do is wrong. Like a lot of people will be like, yeah, I'm glad you hate racists. I think that's the correct position, but you're still doing some really shady stuff. And as an attorney, you should know a bit better. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I really like it when people are in a retreat, especially when they are doing things that I think a lot of people would at least agree doesn't pass the sniff test.
Yeah. Was when you say you're working under the assumption that you're the good guy. I'm trying to remember what Ayn Rand said to Donahue on one of his questions where she goes, examine your assumptions.
Check your premises.
Oh, yeah, that's what
Check
it is.
Your premises.
Check your premises.
Yeah. This is her stupidest, because he's saying that he's got a lot of innate tendencies. And she goes, you just think they're innate. So she was someone who swore the blank slate, which is something that makes no sense when you look at the literature at all. But that argument did not age well, because all of the scientific evidence following that is just all pointed in the opposite direction, and particularly with like twin studies. They've really demonstrated how innate so many things are. Which is really, I think, an uncomfortable thing for almost everyone, including like I think almost no one wants to accept the idea that of what a lot of these twin studies indicate, which is that environment, persuasion,
arguments,
Oh, yeah.
all of these things that we really like to think we can make a huge difference with all of these things. But it turns out that so much of personality is hardwired.
Yeah, there's a book called the Nature or the Nurture Assumption, I believe,
Mhm.
which I quoted, and then you write, where basically she goes through the science and she goes, yeah, a lot of these twins who were like adopted out or broken up, they grew up the same way, or it was certainly enough of the statistics that it wasn't just a rounding error, that there was some genetic component to a lot of these issues.
And the thing that gets very tough and very muddy, and we don't have time to really get into this, and I'm not an expert on it at all, but the idea that personality is very hardwired, that political leanings are very related to personality traits, and that intelligence is very hardwired. You get into very uncomfortable areas where it's like it's what no one would want to be the case, but the evidence is staring you in the face that perhaps the best argument in the world or the best presentation is not even something that can change somebody's not that it can't change some people's, but perhaps there are lots of people who just cannot be convinced or are just not going to be affected by the thing that would convince you. Perhaps raising people in a certain way or changing policies or anything like that is not actually going to be at least as much of a factor as some would hope.
The last thing I wanted to discuss with you today, you probably haven't seen this because it just happened a few hours ago, but PayPal has announced that they're going to team up with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, to, quote, uncovering and disrupting the financial pipelines that support extremist and hate movements, and that the initiative will focus on white supremacists, anti-government organizations, it's in quotes for some reason, and those propagating and profiting from anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, anti-immigrant, anti-Black, anti-Hispanic, and anti-Asian hate. It doesn't say homophobic, which is interesting that that's not included on the list. No, but that's got to be...
PayPal's actually going to send them money.
No, that's got to be by design, and this might be because of its international stuff. Because then there's... Right? Because there's lots of... Like, I don't know if you saw this, but like when Pride Month hits, like Toyota Saudi Arabia does not change its logo to the rainbow flag. So
which would actually, by the way, take some courage if you actually, if you believed in all this.
Yeah. What are they going to do? Start throwing cars off of roofs? So what is your reaction to this?
Well, I think it's incredibly creepy. And I think it's something, this is actually what I was arguing about that got me trashed on the Reason Roundtable podcast last week, is that I was saying it was coming off of when Joe Biden and his press secretary both talked about him talking about that Facebook is killing people. And she was talking about how they're making lists of people who are to be censored and they should be censored across all platforms. And I said, well, I think this once and for all kills the libertarian, it's a private company response. Like, just take that out of your vocabulary, because this is obviously the government putting pressure on private companies to censor speech. And so the Reason Roundtable, took that, and their response was, so Dave thinks Facebook is the government. Well, actually, Dave, Facebook is different than the government.
No, they didn't. Are you serious?
Literally, that's exactly what they took. But, I'll be able to respond to it this week on their show. So anyway,
God.
So that was...
Yeah, you could understand their confusion. You thought Reason was libertarian.
Yeah, there you go. But no, this stuff, look, even if it's not coming from government directives, I mean, it's all political warfare. I mean, that's what all of this is a part of. And if they're targeting anti-government groups and things like that, I mean, yeah, it's very creepy. I think this is actually the next great, battlefront for people who are dissident voices, is that we, the ultimate white pill is that, we really can win this, and that we can, all these ideas can spread, and that technology can improve, and that kind of the state and them are falling apart. But if they can silence all of us, that does make it much harder. This
is a big cue to everyone to buy crypto right now.
Yeah.
Because crypto bottomed out. It's having a bull rally right now. Amazon is saying they're integrating Bitcoin into their payment. If crypto becomes mainstream, PayPal becomes superfluous, or if not superfluous, it's just an annoyance.
Yeah.
Let's suppose you and I couldn't use credit cards. Fine. It would suck. It certainly wouldn't ruin our career. If I'm going to a restaurant, I have to use a debit card or cash. That certainly would be a much worse position that I am in now. But in terms of me being vanished and my life ruined, now this is going to be an issue for businesses. They're trying to put the squeeze onto small businesses who make their money get paid through PayPal. That's going to be tricky. But at the same time, I think a lot of people saw this coming. I think it's always useful when the mask drops and people can be honest about their motivations and what they really care about. And it's going to get harder and harder for them to figure out ways to hurt and silence people other than using literal force. And when it gets to that point, it becomes very, very expensive, both emotionally, psychologically, and in terms of support, because most people are passive totalitarians. They're not active totalitarians.
That's true. That's a very good point. That is a very good point.
They're passive in general. Right. That's why they accept it. They just don't care one way or another. Dave, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of Freedom Fest?
Oh, my favorite part of
you thought you had a little punchline ready, huh?
It's a tie. I did totally ruin it. But it's a tie between that Scott Horton panel and between seeing Senator Cynthia Lummis just go off on monetary policy. Both were my highlights.
God bless America. Hey, everyone, before we go, if you enjoy this podcast, you might enjoy some of the other podcasts available at gasdigitalnetwork.com. I love this show. Can't Get Right with Kurt Metzger. He is absolutely hilarious and really fun to talk to. He's been trying to get me back on the show every time. You can find the full catalog of episodes on demand at gasdigitalnetwork.com or catch the latest 15 episodes anywhere you find podcasts. Here's a clip from Kurt.
And so I've been making videos with Aaron, calling out their smears, calling out their McCarthyism.
They're
calling
fantastic, out their, dude. If anybody watching,
and calling out their horrible. And so what they're doing is pushing the CIA narrative on Syria, and what we're doing is debunking that. And so it was humiliating them. And so finally, Anna tweeted out a doctored video of Aaron Matei that made it look like Aaron Matei was in Syria saying that
his hero was Assad.
That's not what he said. He said,
yeah, right.
He said after these people have been through a decade of war and terrorism, you could see how they would consider Assad their hero.
Yeah, we've done that in America with worse people.
That's right. Look at how people rally around George Bush after 9/11. I mean, that always happens when your country's under attack. You rally around your leader. Same thing in Syria. So she literally tweeted out. Now, this is the host of the largest online news show in the world, tweeting out a doctored video of an anti-war journalist to smear him. When she got called out on it, she never apologized, never retracted. She said, "So what?" That's the host.
Don't they do that? Young Turks for a long time. Don't they have a history of creative editing to like do that? Like I've seen that a number of times from them. Like that.
Well, all I know is it happened for sure in this case, and that's outrageous. And then so the next thing they did was she sent me a DM saying that she was going to blackmail me. She was one time I told a joke at the Young Turks when I was at work. Anna, for lack of a better term, she had bent over and the whole newsroom saw more than we should have.
She's your boss. By the way, she's your boss. She's not your employee or something. Yeah.
No, she had the power in this relationship to book me or fire me, not me. So she bent over and she showed the whole room more than we should have seen. Put it that way. Okay. Right. I don't know how else to put it. And so so I said, hey, nice news skirt, as a way to kind of to give her a heads up, what's happening, and to break the tension in the room. I'm a fucking comedian. That's why they hired me.
Did you wait? I thought you said it like, hey, nice news skirt. Was that like?
I said, hey, Anna, nice news skirt. Like, do you see what's happening here? Yeah. And so it was more to like as a heads up than a busting balls thing. It was more, but that's how we all talk to each other. It was like the Howard Stern show over there. Everybody fucking did everything. I mean, I know the most intimate details. I mean, they would talk about the most intimate details on their. Jen talk about jerking off a horse on their show. I mean, that stuff they used to show. They used to show upskirt photos that were taken of celebrities that didn't have underwear on, and they would say, "Go to our website and you'll see them uncensored." Those are pictures taken. That's worse than a pornographer. That's what Cenk and Anna used to do. They would take pictures of celebrities, and I mean, they did the most disgusting, misogynistic things ever.
Because I can't get right. Because I can't get right.